Well, I want to welcome you to the podcast today, Sammie. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation, and I'm so blessed that you've taken the time out of your day to come and join us and have a really great convo.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I would love to just get started. If you could share with us a little bit about yourself, what's been your journey, and what do you do now?
Yeah, okay. I will give you the summarized version. So I started this particular career path in 2014 after lusting after something like this for a long time. I just didn't know exactly what it looked like. So for years and years prior to that, I just really had this desire to speak to people, particularly women, about how they felt about things all the time. I didn't know exactly what that looked like. At that point, I thought the only option to do that kind of work was to become a therapist. And at that point, and this has changed now, but at that point, I think I just felt too sensitive for that. Like I would have taken too much on. I feel like I would quite love that now, actually, in some ways. But so I discovered this world of life coaching, which was new to me and a really welcomed surprise. So once I discovered that it was actually a thing that real life people could do, and it was a job that actual people had, I just looked around for years actually to find a course that really felt in alignment with me and my values and the kind of work I wanted to do. That really took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, to find something that felt just in my bones a whole full yes. So I studied and graduated and then started a business. I built a business from that point, but worked part-time at the beginning and all sorts of other jobs while I built it up. And I love to share that because I think that's a really important part of the piece that I think a lot of people forget about. That sometimes it's a journey in itself, right? Transitioning into your great love full time. And then so I built a business which is now predominantly seeing private clients one-on-one, completely online. I run a group online coaching program called The Collective, which is just so wonderful and a really kind of intensive, immersive experience for 5 months at a time. And I also have just started a training program called Holding Space, which is teaching women how to hold really powerful space, how to hold women's circles, how to hold really kind of energetically rich workshops. So I also teach at the Life Coaching Academy that I trained at, Beautiful You Coaching Academy. So that's sort of where my work is spread out at the moment.
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. And I love that you shared that you're working a little bit part-time as you built your business. And I think when it comes to social media and everything that's going on now, that yes, life coaching is becoming a bigger thing and it is becoming much more well known, which is awesome. I think we all need so many more coaches out there. But I love how you shared that, because I think it is this thing where there's this stigma. We think we should quit our jobs to then go and do this full time. And there's so much pressure to do that. Did you feel that pressure back then, or did you find what was your journey through that?
I honestly feel like the pressure was a little less back then, even just 5 years ago. I feel like it's possibly a little more concentrated now, being that Instagram's even more of a thing than it was back then. So the whole laptop lifestyle thing is just, it's bigger, it's louder than ever. And so honestly, I didn't really feel this huge pressure, but I see it in a lot of people now. I see it in a lot of my clients. I see it in people who, there's almost an assumption that once you have finished any kind of study, if you choose to study, that leaping into this next career it's like a line in the sand moment. And absolutely, people can do that if they choose to. But I know for me, it was really imperative to grow my business from a place of overflow and abundance rather than desperation. So I never wanted to need a client to pay my rent. I wanted to only work together if we were actually a really amazing match. And I think that has a twofold effect. One, it takes the pressure off you and you can build something that you genuinely love. it allows you to create something that's sustainable, and it doesn't build into or shift into a space of resentment or pressure that you put on the business. Threefold, actually, because thirdly, you just end up working with people that are so deliciously aligned to your work, and without that desperation, operating from a place of overflow and abundance, that's really magnetic for people. And so while it might seem like you build your business slower by having side gigs, part-time jobs, whatever, full-time jobs even for a lot of people, I think the truth is often the opposite, because we're building from a place of, hey, I've got this really awesome thing. Do you want to do it with me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
love that. And it's almost similar to my story. Like, I literally built up my business alongside a corporate full-time role, and then I went part-time, and then built it as long before I then felt comfortable to leave. And it's interesting how I have so many coaches come to me say, like, what was your journey? Like, did you quit straight away? And it's like, well, no, I didn't. I was smart. And, not to say that jumping in full-time, if that's the leap that you need, if that's the pressure that you need to make it work, then totally do that. But I agree. Like, I think for myself, I had a mortgage, so I didn't want to have to put the pressure on myself and on my business to force it to be profitable. And then you're right, you end up taking on clients that are completely not aligned, and then that makes you resentful for sure. So I love how you talk a lot about rising with ease, and there's so much talk about hustle and about flow. I would love to hear your take on that ease and flow and rising with ease.
Okay, awesome. So, there is a lot of talk about hustle out in the world, and I love working hard. I love working hard, but I don't want it to feel hard. I don't want it to feel like a struggle. I don't want at the end of the day to be like, oh my God, I am empty in a way that is not satisfying. So I really believe that we can create thriving, flourishing businesses from a place of ease. And that, again, doesn't mean that you'll never work hard or that you'll just lay back and it will all magically appear before you, but rather that there's some kind of ways of operating or things that we can do to choose a different way of building. So, for example, I think it's a really undervalued and amazing practice to get into the energy that you want to be in before you begin your day of work and start from that place. It's something like 1 hour of inspired action. You probably know the calculation or the what this is better than I do. Something like an hour of inspired action is equivalent to 6 hours of uninspired action. And so when we get into the state of whatever it is that we're wanting to cultivate, getting into a creative place, getting into an inspired place, getting into a focused space before we even start, and then working from that place, one, we minimize so much work hours, but also we're creating in this, or we're writing, or we're coaching, or we're building our businesses and whatever that looks like for you in a way that is just so much more enjoyable, And when we're having fun, when we're feeling good, when we're alive, when we feel the sense of ease and flow as we work, that's sustainability to me. That's regenerating energy. We can show up day after day after day from that place because we're not spent. We're more alive than ever. I love to work with my clients around creating or cultivating practices so that at the end of the day you feel more energized and alive than at the very beginning. And I believe in this so much. I also believe that the more that we rest, the better that we work. And there's some parts about the hustle message and culture that I agree with potentially. But the kind of grind till you're asleep message, work till you're dead kind of thing, just doesn't vibe with me. And I think instead, prioritizing rest and slowness and spaciousness actually makes you a more productive human. And so it feels like this, we talk about feminine energy and we speak about that being in some ways related to rest and recuperation and allowing and receiving and playing. And I think sometimes people forget that that actually makes us more productive. It's not a waste of time. It's not, I'm putting 3 hours aside on this particular day just to do nothing. Actually, it's creating a space and a highly productive version of you when you come back to work. Best of both worlds, which is what I'm all about. Best of all worlds.
There's something that I love to do. Like I love to do, and it was recently that I go and have a float. So I run events here in Brisbane once a month, and usually a couple of days after that event, I'll go and have a salt float. And it's the most, and so, like complete sound deprivation and light deprivation. Like it's just black. It's amazing. And it helps me completely switch off. And last month I actually had a float and then a sauna, which, you know, for some would think is quite indulgent. And even I was like, am I going to go spend 2 hours in the spa? That's crazy. And it was like a, you know, a Thursday afternoon or something. And I did it, but it was like that space that I gave myself I was then able to tap into so much creativity that I was just on fire for the rest of the night. So I absolutely agree with you. I think there's space where we get to allow ourselves to open up that container to be, you know, open to things. Otherwise, if we're not even allowing that space to be open, then we're missing so many opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up, because I feel like there is this edge that we all have where it starts to feel a bit indulgent, a bit luxurious, a bit too much, right? And I think that's a really fun place to play, a really fun place to explore. Like, why have I just made up a story in my head that it's too much to spend 2 hours on this day after I've held an event and held the space and created an experience for other people? Still, I tell myself it's too much. I've just had a really similar experience this past week. I held a 3-day training, and after that, even taking, you know, multiple days to go slowly felt edgy. It felt like, oh, am I just pushing into my edges now? Of all of the stories come up of, is this lazy? You know, it's not like, I don't know anyone personally who feels 100% comfortable and in their power resting as much as they need to at any point. I think we all kind of have our edge, and that's a really interesting thing to explore and lean into and question.
For sure. And I mean, holding space for people over 3 days, like that takes a lot out of you. So you need that space to be able to, like, I think if you had gone the opposite way and just gone straight back into work, I don't believe that you would have been able to show up, and anybody, I don't mean just you, but anybody be able to show up and be an amazing coach to hold space for a new client or any type of client coming your way on that day. Like, I just think as coaches, we really need to be mindful of making sure that we're filling our cups back up and not giving from a place of emptiness.
Absolutely. And that was a lesson for me, actually, because I needed more time. I needed more space and more time than I gave myself. So we're always, I guess, expanding and experimenting with new levels of how we take care of ourselves. But yeah, I was schooled that week and I thought I had it down, and still there's absolutely more to learn, for sure.
But I think it's also fighting that old conditioning of, if we've been an employee before, that, oh my God, it's a Thursday afternoon, I should be working till 6 p.m, right? And it's like, well, no, I run my own business. I can choose when I want to work. And yet there's still that old conditioning that we have to fight against, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I would love for you to elaborate on allowing and receiving, especially as we were talking just then about feminine power and allowing ourselves to rest and play and receive. For someone listening to this that has very much been driven by their masculine energy and their go, 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 they're onto the next thing, the next thing, and they're constantly pushing and struggle with that. That's how I like to think of the masculine and feminine. Please school me if you want to add to that. But how would you encourage someone who hears that and thinks, that's not how I've gotten results in the past, or that's a different way of thinking it? Like, am I trying to ask you the right question? Like, does that make sense?
I hear you. Absolutely. Great question. I love that. So I'd say that most people are operating in that go, 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 strive, strive, strive space, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but I think a really brilliant magic piece of the puzzle is the receiving and the allowing. This links so much into the money that we make as well.
Mm.
So when we're always, it's like thinking of it, I've never used this analogy before, so let's see how it goes. Thinking of it like a two-way street. One, we can't always just be in the one energy at all times. Otherwise, we'll never come back around, right? We'll just always be going one way. I'm not sure where that analogy is going. I might leave it there. But I think if we're just churning out work and we're always doing and we're always creating and we're always kind of striving, we miss out on this really beautiful piece, the feminine energy piece of the receiving. So the receiving can look like all sorts of things, but I think when we tap into our receiving energy, and I'll speak to that in a moment, what that can actually look like. When we tap into our receiving energy, we tap into this really easeful part of business, which is I have showed up, I have given, I have served, I have shared, and now I can receive. It's like, actually a much better analogy than the two-way street is an inhale and an exhale. It's like exhaling and you're giving and you're sharing and you're serving, and then you get to inhale. And the only way to continue being fully sustained and fulfilled is to allow both the inhale and the exhale, right? So we can, like, we see people burn out all the time in this entrepreneurial space, because there's so much of the doing. And so unless we allow ourselves a breath and some space to fully receive all of the work that we've actually done, it's, I think, putting us on that road to burnout. So I'll just give you some examples of ways that I like to play. I feel like I'm letting you into my dirty secrets, which is kind of fun. But if I launch a program or if I share an event or something like that, I will put things out into the world. Like I'll create, I'll write, I'll share, I'll speak, I might invite. And then I know that for me, a necessary part of that is to receive. So I will nap, I will lie in the sun, I will just take some time to drink tea. Like, it sounds so simple and it can sound almost trite, but when you get into this practice of, I don't always have to be going, it's really interesting to see what happens. I know that a lot of your listeners will be interested in kind of the energetic magic of this, but what I notice is that whenever I nap, people arrive. If I keep going, which I will still do at times, right? Like, I am not perfect at this. If I keep going and I think, oh, there's more I could do, or there's more I could share, or I could write an email like this, nothing happens. And then when I stop and I close on my laptop and I lay in the sun and I close my eyes, that is when people arrive. And I'm still amazed by that time and time and time again. Thing is, I'm not the only person that experiences that. It's like the phenomenon of when you go on holiday and suddenly all of these clients just arrive in your inbox.
Yeah.
And you've been doing nothing. You've been swanning around in Hawaii, drinking cocktails, whatever. And suddenly things are really in flow. And so I think remembering that we are energetic beings and that we need to be in both the doing and the receiving means that we get to be in our fullest expression of what it is to be a powerful business owner, to show up, but also to receive. And when we soften into that, because it really is a softening and it's uncomfortable at the beginning, it feels that whole thing of too much, too luxurious. Surely not. There's more I could do. So it's a practice for sure, and one to explore, and see again where your edge is. But when you soften into that, it's like a remembering that your feminine energy, you're allowing, you're receiving, you're opening up to everything that is just waiting for you, actually brings some serious gold, like literally and metaphorically. It's so good. Yeah.
Absolutely. I literally had a client a couple of weeks ago where she was in stress out mode and she was like not sure where her next client is going to come from. And then I was asking her, like, how do you spend your days? Like, well, talk me through what a day looks like for you. And she's like, I'll show you, and showed me her calendar. And it was literally like had booked out every little block in her calendar of things she had to do. And she it was maybe one or two clients there. There was not, the rest of it was just actions of, content and bits and pieces that she had to do. And I was like, there's no space for clients. Like, what if you took some of that out, put it somewhere else, you know, to still get to and whatnot, but allow yourself space to open up? Because if there's no space, it's like, you know, quantum physics is all about vacuums, right? So it's like, if there's no actual space and nothing else can go in, then it's going to go somewhere else. So you've got to allow that space for more clients to come your way and fill your diary with new clients, right? So, and just by taking that out and moving some energy around in her office and things like that, and it was so intuitive that I did that. It's not something I would normally do with a client, but I was like, so random that she was like fully booked with stuff to do, but no clients. It was really random.
I love that. I remember my very first coach said to me, if you don't have clients in the space that you want them, exactly like you're saying, just create the space for them. Like, let it be this uncomfortable space where there's nothing happening, and just see what happens. And that, yeah, I believe in that so much. And I love that you have this really tangible example, because I know we can speak about these things as concepts, but then when you have examples and proof, really, that playing in, you know, beyond the 3D really works.
Yeah.
I think that's that just kind of grounds these ideas.
Love it. Awesome. So I would love to just speak more on, is there anything else you'd like to add to being able to tap into your feminine power? Like, when you talk about tapping into your feminine power, what does that look like for someone?
Oh, good question. This is a question I often ask my clients or people within my group programs, because I think it means something different to everybody, actually. I think part of it is embracing all of what it is to be a woman. I think it is working in tune with a whole lot of cycles, our menstrual cycles, our seasons, the moon cycles, and not like you have to track every single thing every day and anything like that, but just an awareness more so. I think it is being powerfully connected to your intuition and making decisions from that place, as opposed to overriding with logic. I know for me, and I'm sure that for so many people listening, we can recall some experiences where we made decisions based on what looks right on paper. We've written down the pros and cons, and then known that it wasn't right, but done it anyway. And it turns out that, of course, it was never right. And we always know, and that our intuition is always guiding us. So being connected to that place and using it as a business tool rather than just something that we use externally outside of our businesses. Celebrating all areas of ourselves, I think, is a really big piece of feminine power. So bringing in all of what it is to be you, and that's probably an entirely other conversation, but celebrating your wildness and your gentleness and your like the inner freak, the beautiful goddess, like everything that makes up every woman. And again, we're all going to be so individual there, bringing that all in and celebrate and allowing yourself to really live into all of that, as opposed to compartmentalizing in that kind of masculine way. Like in my business, I show up only in this version of me. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I'd love for us to dive more into intuition, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course.
Tell me, what's something that you, like, what most recently, where have you had to tap into your intuition for your business?
Okay. I have an example from today, which is clearly fresh because it was about an hour and a half ago. And I am just in the process of finding I hope this isn't a dry example. I'll juice it up. I'm in the process of finding a venue for my next training. And while there are all of these really kind of logical options, which are hire an empty space and like a warehouse space and bring some, bolsters and cushions and things into that space. What I really, truly am being called to, even though it makes far less logical sense, is hire a giant, big, beautiful, luxurious house with a pool and bring everything in. And And so it's just been an experiment today to see all of these very kind of easy, even logical options and go, you know what, my intuition is pulling me elsewhere, and I just need to trust that, even though it's going to be more expensive, even though I'm going to have to bring more things in to be able to create the environment that I want to. Even though it doesn't make sense on paper, I trust that this is where I'm being called to go for some reason. I trust that this is the experience I need to create. And so that's kind of like an everyday example of something that doesn't, make logical sense, but feels right. And now I feel like being tapped into our intuitions, we have a responsibility to actually act on what we hear. So I love to think of our intuitions like a relationship. And if you imagine that you're in a relationship with somebody and they're telling you something and you're never listening, or you do the opposite thing, or you're just like, yeah, but I'm going to do something entirely different, they're going to stop talking and it's going to get quieter. And so to be in right relationship with our intuition and to be in a very kind of deeply respectful relationship, I think that taking the action again and again and again, this is the practice, right? But taking the action again and again and again and letting it be a relationship that gets stronger and stronger and louder and clearer is honestly one of the most laser sharp business tools you can possibly have. And it's free and it's within you and it's available at any moment.
Love that. And I think I would actually love to know, have you always had that connection with your intuition, or was there a time where you really had to rebuild that relationship?
I would say as a child, I feel like I was really connected to it. I'd say lots of kids are. I am absolutely a very sensitive human. I feel a lot of things. I feel a lot of other people's things too. And so that was really prominent and present as a kid. I'd say around like university years, early 20s, partying a lot, not listening to my body and also not listening to my intuition, definitely was quieter / almost, completely like gone at that point. Not gone because it was there just waiting, but I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
Very, very quiet. And then probably from mid-20s onwards, it's been a conscious though rebuilding of that relationship. And it still is something to, it's like a maintenance thing. It doesn't make it sound super sexy, but I think it really is. It's a maintenance thing. It's a checking in. It's a, how do I feel right now? What do I need? What am I being guided to do in this moment? What feels right? And letting that be an ongoing practice as a way to continue to build and strengthen and hone that relationship.
I believe it is too. I think it's something that we need to maintain rather than waiting for those big life-changing decisions and then going, oh, what's my intuition trying to tell me? And then it's not listening, it's not there. Because it's like, well, you didn't trust me the 50 other times I was trying to tell you.
Right. Okay. So I love that you've mentioned that. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah.
Okay. So I spent a couple of years working as the in-house life coach at a retreat centre out in Daylesford, which is an hour or so out of Melbourne. And I would run an intuition workshop maybe once a month there. So people would come and they would stay for 28 days typically. It was a very kind of intensive live-in space. And so I would work with people from all walks of life, all sorts of ages. And within this intuition workshop, we would talk about like where you're at with it. Does it feel like something you've ever used? And there were a lot of people that were so unfamiliar with even the feeling of what it was, or even really what it meant, because it was just so foreign to them. And it's not like it's something we're taught often. I know I wasn't taught this. And so, sometimes I would speak to people who hadn't tapped into their intuition or hadn't thought about it for 55 years, or however long. And an exercise that we would do, and if there's anyone listening that feels quite disconnected from their intuition, this is a good way to bring it back to the everyday, because I love that you mentioned that it doesn't have to be only within the big moments that we tap into it, but also in the micro everyday moments where it starts to be like we sow the seed. So an exercise that I would teach is to bring two options to mind that are really, really easy. A really easy decision to make. Something as easy as, what shall I have for dinner? And tune into your body and notice what the first option feels like. Notice the sensations in your heart, your belly, your breath, your jaw. Less so what's going on in your mind, thought-wise, but how it actually feels in your body. Are you getting any signs, signals, guidance? And feeling into that and noticing, well, how does that feel for me? Letting that go, and then bringing the second option to mind and tuning in again and noticing. And it was so beautiful, because I would see people that hadn't tuned into the intuition, had never thought about it. 55 years old, never once considered it, and they had very clear messages from their body. And so while it's something to build and cultivate, we all have it. And playing and practicing in those little low
risky areas.
Thank you. Low risk areas, like whatever you're going to have for dinner is probably going to be okay. Is a really safe place to begin.
Beautiful. And is there any way that you help women in business to be able to tap into their intuition as well?
Yes. I think there's a really beautiful, there's all sorts of ways. The first one that's come to mind I'll share with you. And that is being in ceremony with our businesses, being in collaboration with them, and not thinking of them necessarily as something that we own or us, but rather this beautiful kind of individual entity that we're collaborating with. And so say we're creating something, we're creating a program, let's say. And rather than just sitting down in front of your laptop and going, okay, brain, like go, write all the things, rather tuning in, quietening down, turning down the noise, turning down the external noise. And when I say noise, I mean turning down the Instagram, turning down all of the other voices that are out in the world, and tuning in and listening. What's there? Like, what's already there waiting for you? This is another way of lessening the amount of time that we work, because we're not just like stressy and up in our heads all the time.
Or constantly taking on information, like shoving more into our brains.
More is not more.
No.
Yes. And so being in ceremony with your business in all sorts of ways, and creating a real sense of, we kind of sit together in ceremony, and that might sound like an intense word, and it can simply be just sitting at your desk and having your eyes closed. We sit together, my business and I tune in, like, are there any messages I need to hear? And so that, even as an intuition practice for women in business, can be beautiful. And
love that.
Yeah. And in addition to that, I would say just feeling into your decisions as opposed to thinking into your decisions only, and letting both of those energies be present, the thinking and the feeling.
I found the strongest way that I've helped to build my intuition is listening to the resistance. So noticing, because that was much easier for me to then try and tap in for whatever reason. And I would notice, and it's recently actually, I, again, thinking about something, creating something new, and had someone, another coach, tell me to do it this way. And I was like, not feeling that. I don't know what it is about that. And just noticing that when I'm a hell yes, like when my whole body is into it and I believe in it and it's something that I really want to do, every part of me is a yes, and I'm taking action fully into it. Yeah. But there was just something about this, and it was something new I wanted to launch. I knew there was something that I wanted to create, but what I had thought about, what I put out on paper, technically for the business model, looked good, but there was just something not right. Like it just wasn't the right fit. And so for me, it's listening to that resistance and trusting that that's not where you're supposed to go.
Right. So then how do you differentiate between that resistance and fear of doing something bigger than you've ever done before?
Yeah, I think for me, I think fear feels different. But I guess that's also from practicing that, right? So it's like, is this because I'm at the stage where I'm like, I know that that scares me and that's going to take me to the next level. I know that that's a fear based on what I believe is possible for myself. Otherwise it was just like, I think it's different. I felt like the fear was more up here, and I'm doing this on the video listening. If you're listening to the podcast, I've got my hand up in my head. But like the resistance was much lower. So it was like this, oh, something's not right. And in a lot of my coaching, I do MBIT processes, and I'm not sure if you've heard of M-braining, but it's actually understanding the different neural networks in the body. And so our gut brain is all about our action center. So if we're not taking action, there's something out of alignment with our action center. And that's also a trust area as well, and safety. So it was interesting, like, you know, when it comes to like stepping outside your comfort zone and following after something that you really, really want, but it scares you, I feel like it's a different thing compared to resistance. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree with that. And I love how you've explained that. I think those two feelings can feel, it can be confusing at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Know which is which. And I love to think of it like, I love the way you've put that so much. I want to go back and listen to that. Is that fear can feel constrictive, and no, resistance can feel restrictive, like the actual no, the intuitive no. And the good fear, the intuitive yes, feels expansive. So even though it feels scary as hell, it still feels expansive. One of my very favorite words on earth is, it's an ancient Hebrew word, and it's yirah, Y-I-R-A-H. You might know it. And it's the direct translation, the only translation in English is fear. But specifically it means to take up more space than you've ever taken up before. It still feels like you're getting chased by a tiger. The feel is still so real, right? Like in your body, it's coursing through your body. It's telling your mind all sorts of stories. It still feels physiologically incredibly real. And so I love that word, because I think that helps us to differentiate between, is this the good juicy fear, or is this actually, this is a no for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, taking up more space. That's so good. Yeah, I heard someone else speaking about that actually a little while ago, and I'm like, I love, even as women, like I think that's something that I feel like we need to step into. And the more and more I see more women stepping into their power and stepping into speaking up and standing in their truth, just lights me up so much. I just freaking love it. So I know that I was reading a little bit on your website about how you found that you had the struggle around that fear of being seen. How did you find that you worked through that, like, and then being able to express yourself fully?
I absolutely had that fear. And that's a great question. There's so many elements to this. I think the really basic answer, and the actual how to for me, was much more complex than this, but I just stopped caring about what other people thought of me more than I cared about what I thought about myself. I heard someone say yesterday, I went to see Marie Forleo last night.
Oh, I'm seeing her tonight.
Amazing. Yes. Well, you will hear this, hopefully. She said that she would only ever listen to criticism from people who she really respected and admired. And she'd never had anyone troll her or say anything negative about her that she respected or admired. And I love that way of thinking about it. Brene Brown also has that incredible quote, and I'm going to just paraphrase it because I don't know it exactly, but
if you're in the arena, something like that.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. If you're not in the arena, I'm not interested, nor
does your opinion even matter?
Yeah. I'm not interested in your opinion. And so when I actually looked around at what it was to be seen in this industry as me in my own life, the people that were celebrating me, the people that were stoked to see me out in the world, were the people that loved me. No one's ever actually said, like, girl, no. I'm sure behind my back lots of times, or, like secretly on the internet. I don't know. And I don't really care anymore, because that's not my place to spend my energy. I feel like our energy is such a precious resource, and I really want to spend it on and with the people who are excited to be all of us, and to be celebrating all of us, and to be seen, and to be playing bigger, and to be stretching into these new unknown realms. And those people are, I would say, never going to be the ones that pull you down. So in terms of how did I move through being seen, it was, very much I'm just going to decide now. I'm just going to choose again. I'm just going to decide to stop caring or making stories up, actually, about what other people thought. Not caring what other people thought, because there was no truth or proof in that. It was simply, I'm going to stop creating some crazy little stories about what people are thinking or whatever. And there are new levels to that, right? There was a point in my business where I started speaking really openly and freely about menstrual cycles, which meant talking about blood, which meant talking about things that a lot of people, it felt more taboo.
Yeah.
Crazily enough, because it's such a beautiful, natural part of our lives. But
that we've been doing forever.
Forever. All of us, most of us, and so, I think there's new levels, right? It's not like, I absolutely don't feel like I've mastered the art of being seen. I just feel way more comfortable to share what is on my heart and true for me, and trusting that the right people will be into that. And the rest, there are other people for them, and that is perfect.
I think it plagues so many people, that stress and worry about what other people are going to think. And like, I think I moved through two different areas there. Like, one was like, well, again, all those stories of what I'm making it mean, and listening to other people's opinions that don't even matter. Like, they're not a big part of my life, so why am I even stressing about it? But believing that and thinking that was important was also costing me and my clients the visibility of helping more people, right? So it's actually costing the reach out. So if that was holding me back from showing up online, or to speak my truth, or to, do videos or stories or whatever it is, that's actually costing me and my business, but it's also costing the clients that need my help. I think that was a key indicator for me. And then the other one was, when we consider someone else's opinion above our own, that actually affects our own identity and our own self-worth. And I think that so many people do hold other people's opinions above their own. What would you say, or how would you help someone work through that?
I just love both of those points so much. It's so freeing to just remove all of that from your life. Just decide to remove all of that from your life. So can I just get you to ask that question again? How would I support someone to move through which part of that?
Probably the self-worth aspect, I think.
Yeah.
About how they value other people. Like, because I think you've talked a lot about, I was reading about how the struggle of putting other people first, and always putting other people above yourself. So I think that's an element of that. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think we all need to have a why foundation that is stronger than all of the voices around us, whether they're actual human voices from people that you know, whether they're voices that you hear or see on the internet, whether they are blogs that you've read or whatever. We need to have something that grounds us into our power, that feels stronger than anything else. So, for example, my dad, for a long time in my business, would say to me, "Are you still doing that thing?" Would I can laugh about it now, but man, it felt so real at the beginning. It felt like, oh, am I still doing this thing? It just felt like an entire, I felt like I was allowing it to question my worth, my purpose, the impact that I was having, all of the things, right? This is not his world. He also doesn't understand that people can make an actual income working on the internet. What? And so when I got to the point of tuning in and really grounding into, actually, this is important work. This is my purpose. This is what I'm here to do. And this is not necessarily unshakable, right? We're human. We have our moments. And I just want to say that, because I don't want it to ever seem like there's this level of perfection we reach where no one else's voices ever affect us for the rest of our lives ever again.
No, we're human.
Yeah. But I think when there's this point there's this point that we get to where we go, this work that I'm doing, this life that I'm living, I have created to be more important and have more value than anyone else's opinions. And I think that can be as simple as a choice, like simply a decision in a moment going, you know what, I'm just going to decide. And that sounds so easy. It sounds ridiculously easy, but an invitation to anyone listening to do that, if you feel like that's something that you're challenged by, just decide this work that I'm doing, this value that I'm putting on my work is more important to me than anyone else's voice.
Was there something that had to happen for you to make that change?
I think it was probably just, I got tired of myself.
Okay.
I got tired of questioning myself when 80% of the time I knew and I was good and I felt like I was really good at this thing and I could show up in this. It just felt so natural. It felt like the most organic thing. And then to be shaken by something that is so pure-hearted, like, are you still doing that thing, right? Like there was actually nothing awful about that. It was just a simple question. Like,
he's probably interested in what you're doing.
Right. But we take it so personally, you know, and I liken it often to other people's professions that don't seem that interesting or feel to us or feel kind of like something we don't understand. And I think when we're sharing our heart work, when we're doing work that feels like an extension of our soul, we can take other people's opinions so personally and so seriously. And then there's some, like, I don't know, there's like some guy who works in engineering and he tells me about his job and I'm like, cool. And I don't ask follow-up questions, nor do I really understand it. And I'd be surprised if he's like, oh my gosh, what's she thinking about this job that I do? It's just
you might be.
Maybe. I hope he's not.
But we do, you're right. We do that. And
yeah.
I was literally talking to a client about this yesterday, that it doesn't have to be a judgment, because as a human being and our way our brains work, we're trying to make sense of something in our world. So when someone doesn't understand your job or what it is that you do and they ask you a question, it's probably because they need more information because It doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a judgment. You get to choose to take it on as a judgment.
Right. Yes. Okay. That is gold. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I would love to hear, what was the purpose behind living in an ashram in the Himalayas? Tell me about that.
That was, that was a point in my life, which was just before I found my coaching world, actually. And I was just playing with all sorts of different things. I'd quit my job and I was just like, I was making potions and selling them to my yoga teacher. I was thinking maybe I want to be a masseuse. Maybe I want to be like, I'm sure there's a whole lot of multi-passionates out here listening and thinking I relate. I just didn't really know exactly what it was. And I hadn't found the thing necessarily, even though I hadn't found the course yet. So I didn't know exactly what it could look like. And I just really craved, it sounds so cliched. Back then, I would say I was just wanting to find myself. This was a point in my life where my now husband, then boyfriend, was touring full-time as a musician. He would be away for up to 8 months of the year at a time, like just away a lot. And that was so awesome and so challenging at the same time, right? Like, we were apart for a long time, and that gave me a lot of incentive to go and just explore things and do things on my own. So when I was at the point of going to India, I thought, I really want to deepen my yoga practice. That was definitely part of it. I want to learn how to be very comfortable being uncomfortable. I want to be able to prove to myself that I've got this, that I can go into a potentially challenging situation and hold myself there. And like, I look back at that 25-year-old me and I think, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of these kind of intentions for doing this. And underneath all of that was probably like, God, help me find myself. Interestingly, I got there and I remember the first day I got there and it took 3 hours to check in, just because it was India time. So like things are different. And I sat there and I walked into my room, and my room was it was like a wooden slat with a mattress, which was maybe like 3 centimeters, 2 centimeters even thick. Nothing else in the room. And a like kind of like a big tap, AKA shower, and a bucket and a toilet. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Like, this is the worst decision of my life. I'm alone. I don't know anyone. I'm in this village in the middle of India. And I walked out of that building to try and find somewhere, because this is pre-iPhone life. I walked somewhere to try and get a SIM card to put in my little flip phone. And as I walked out around the side of the ashram, I remember I slipped over in something. And I got up and I had this moment, like first of all, there was this moment of, I am in full regret of this decision, closely followed by getting up and looking around and having this almost divine moment of realization that I'm okay. I remember I looked around and I was like, I'm good. I don't think there's anything I need to find or do or prove. I think I'm good.
On day one. That's pretty good.
Yes. It really was, followed by what am I doing here for the next month? Yeah. But that was a really freeing moment. And I think so much of the self-development space is getting to somewhere. Hopefully one day I'll feel this certain way. And then just kind of, this is going to sound super cheesy, but just kind of embracing and loving ourselves exactly where we are right now, and remembering that we're actually okay. Like, we're okay in this moment is a really incredible catalyst for actual self-development, coming from a place of, I'm already good. Like, I'm already okay with myself. So then I just spent the next month doing all sorts of Ayurveda practices and lots and lots and lots of yoga. And it was amazing and challenging at the same time. Awesome. A lot of silence. Yeah.
Has there been any other major challenges that you'd love to share about, your business? Like, has it been something that you've had to work through and grow through in your business, other than, the whole thing's a personal journey?
Yeah.
Anything in particular?
The only thing that comes to mind is, there's been a whole lot of challenges. Absolutely. There has, people say this is the ultimate personal development journey, right? Running a business, creating and running your own business. For sure. I believe that. And I think a big moment for me was taking the full-time leap. Was, can I catch myself? Because at that point, my business was, taking the leap was still a leap. It was still, okay, now that I've created this time for myself, I need to build. And so creating that self-trust while, believing in myself in that moment was a challenge for sure, because it's not like everybody around us is doing that, right? Like, I know a lot of people that start businesses might be the only ones of the people that they currently know that are doing that. And so this is where other people doing similar things and connecting with them is so important. Makes you feel far less crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a great challenge for me, was taking that leap and holding myself strong enough to actually operate from a place of, this is really important. I know this is of service to the world. And when I say those words now, that feels really easy, but at the time it was like, oh, is this going to work? For sure. Doing it without a plan B.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give someone who's currently going through a challenging time in their business and doubting their choices and regretting possibly the decision?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, quieten down all the noise. God, it's so overwhelming sometimes. Like, turn off your online platform just for a moment. Like, let yourself tune into your intuition, actually get quiet enough to hear what is actually going on. Get support. get support from someone who has been there and who has who has real vested interest in you thriving, succeeding, and you taking this thing far beyond how you can even think of it right now. So I'd say, quieten down the noise, tune in. What is actually going on? Sometimes what is actually going on is not what it seems on the surface. Just like your story earlier of your client who was struggling to get clients and then looking at her schedule and realizing there's no time. The problem is not always clients not, and not seeing me. It's I'm not having the space to create them in the first place. So getting quiet enough to actually tune into what is the actual issue here? What do I need support with? We're not supposed to do this alone. It can be very lonely, and at times we can feel so separate from people around us, when we choose to operate in this solopreneur, I've got it, I'm on my own way. But actually getting support, whether it's a mastermind with some friends, whether it's hiring a coach, whether it's checking in with a friend who is, on a similar path to you, whether it's a mentor, like whatever it might be, actually allowing yourself to speak it out, talk it out after you've allowed yourself the space to be quiet, I would say is really necessary. We are supposed to do this thing as a sisterhood, and there are so many people around you, whether you have them in your life yet or not, who are wanting to collaborate with you, celebrate you, lift you up. And tapping into those networks, I think, is so epically important when it comes to facing our own challenges, because just riding solo can be tough.
I agree. I totally agree. And that's literally the reason why I started my events in Brisbane. And from the beginning of that, I literally have found like 5 friends that I now do all of that with, like all mastermind, check in with, get on the phone when things are dramatic and talk through all those challenges. So I totally agree with you. I think it's a really, really important part of going on that journey. And I think, I think that, what's that old adage? Like, if you want to go quick, go it alone. But if you want to go far, do it with other people. And I think that's a really important part when it comes to being successful in business, for sure. So I'd love to get your take on how you feel people are feeling now at this end of the year. We're heading into a whole new decade for 2020. What's been going on for you? What's been happening with your clients at the moment? How are they all feeling?
I would say the way that my clients are feeling has felt quite different to the way that I've seen the online space feeling, which is, oh my gosh, there's only, back when there was 90 days left, there's 90 days left. This is still a quarter of the year. Like, how much can you create in that time? And I think not just putting things off until next year just because makes sense to me. But I also think that there's this unnecessary pressure that we can put on ourselves to create this next big thing within this certain time frame, and maybe that's right for you, and if it is, I trust that you know that. But I think, like, time is such a made up thing, and the fact that it's the end of a decade has amplified that message of there's only 2 months to go. So I've been seeing on the flip side to that, this really a different message of, there's 2 or 3 months to go in this year. How about you get still? And then by the beginning of next year, and this is not be still, do nothing. This is be still enough to really tune into what it is that you want. Then by the beginning of next year, you're operating from like pure potency. And I would say that I would love to play probably in the middle of those, like release this weird time pressure that we put on ourselves to do a certain thing by a certain time of year, unless that really motivates you and allows you to thrive. If it stresses you out, please let that go. If you feel inspired by that, awesome, run with it, amazing. I haven't really actually, in truth, noticed much of that messaging come through within client sessions. And I think when we play the long game, when we talk about things in terms of this is my life's work, those more minor timeframes kind of dissolve away in terms of their importance.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah. Have you noticed that? Like, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a different space where I feel like it's time to shed the old identity and start to move into who you want to become now before we step into that new year.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's like, well, if we want to go into a whole new decade, like what do you need to release now? Like what do you need to let go of? Maybe it's just cleaning out stuff in your house and opening up new spaces and allowing yourself to be that vacuum. Yeah. Or starting to go, well, actually for the last 10 years, this is the person I've been and that has served me. But now it's time to go, well, I've recognized that there's some old behaviors that I don't want to be anymore. And there's some things there that I needed to heal. And maybe I need to do that work now and then step into that fresh year, fresh and ready and raring to go, and then create from that place. That's where I'm feeling.
Yes, that feels like the sweetest exhale. I love that.
Beautiful. What are you excited about for in 2020?
Oh, I feel like 2020, it feels like a big year of adventure. I would love to take my new training holding space on tour. That feels fun. I feel like the way that my business is currently rolling feels awesome to me. Like there's so much I want to keep about that. And it probably just feels more travel focused, more adventure driven, and deeper than ever before. That feels good.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for this conversation today. It has absolutely been delicious and I've really enjoyed chatting with you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to leave us with anything in particular, anything that's on your heart at the moment? Anything maybe?
Yeah. Actually, there's something we were speaking about only a few minutes ago, and that is, seeking out support when you need it. I guess the thing that I would say is just make sure you're also supporting your people, right? Like there is something so important about lifting others up and really holding yourself in this new paradigm of when we celebrate each other, everybody thrives. When we support each other, everybody thrives. We're no longer each other's competition. That is such an old way of thinking and doing. So yeah, just an invitation. If there's someone in your mind right now, someone in your life that you think I could just really give you a little boost of love, go do that.
Yes. Love that. Please do. And share with us both on socials, right? Share with us if you've gone and done that. Tag us in your posts, in your stories, and let us know what resonated with you from this episode. So thank you so much, Sammie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.